The crack echoed across Fort Bragg's parade ground like a rifle shot on a still morning. 282 soldiers heard it, 282 witnesses to the moment when everything changed. Master Sergeant Wade Brennan would later say it was the loudest sound he'd heard outside of combat. And Wade Brennan had heard a lot. Desert Storm, 2 tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, 37 years of watching young men and women learn what it meant to be soldiers. But nothing prepared him for October 15th, 2019. Nothing prepared him for watching a 5'4" woman named Reese Hartford break a man's arm in front of nearly 300 witnesses. And nothing prepared him for what would happen next. This is that story. Portland, Maine had never felt colder than the autumn of 2011. At least not to 16-year-old Reese Hartford, standing in her best black dress at Arlington National Cemetery, watching them fold the flag that had draped her father's coffin. Sergeant Major Thomas Hartford, United States Marine Corps, killed in action, Helmand Province, Afghanistan. He'd been 42 years old. He'd promised his daughter he'd be home for Christmas. The Marines handed Sarah Hartford the folded flag. Reese's mother took it with trembling hands, her face a mask of practiced composure that would crack the moment they got home. Reese knew because she'd seen it crack every night for the past 2 weeks. The sound of her mother crying through the walls of their small house. Quiet sobs that tried so hard not to disturb her daughter. But Reese heard everything. She'd stopped crying 3 days after they got the news. She'd cried herself empty, and what remained was something harder. Something that felt like iron in her chest where her heart used to be. At the cemetery, a Marine officer knelt before her. Young, maybe 25, his face was kind. "Your father was a great man," he said. "He died protecting his brothers. He died with honor." Reese looked at him with eyes that seemed too old for 16. "Thank you, sir," she said. But inside, all she could think was, honor didn't bring him home. 1 year later, still Portland, still cold, Reese Hartford, now 17, walked through the parking garage of the main mall. It was November, dark by 5:30. She'd stayed late at the library studying for the SATs. College applications were due soon. Her mother wanted her to go to University of Maine, stay close to home, safe. But Reese wasn't thinking about college as she walked between rows of cars. She was thinking about her father, always thinking about her father. The way he'd taught her to tie her shoes when she was 4. The way he'd carried her on his shoulders at the 4th of July parade. The way he'd looked in his dress uniform the last time she'd seen him. She didn't notice the man until he was right behind her. "Hey!" She turned, mid-30s, unshaven, something wrong in his eyes. "Give me your bag." Reese's heart hammered. Her bag, her phone, her father's dog tags she carried everywhere. "No." The word came out steadier than she felt. The man stepped closer, 6 feet tall, heavy, mean. "I said, give me the fucking bag." Reese held it tighter. "No." What happened next happened fast. He grabbed for the bag. She pulled back. He grabbed her arm. She tried to twist away. He was so much stronger, so much bigger. She fought. She really fought. But fighting without training is just flailing. He shoved her against a car. Her head cracked against the window. Stars exploded in her vision. "Stupid bitch," he said. "Learn your place." He ripped the bag from her hands, and then someone shouted. A man running from across the garage. The mugger ran. Reese slid down the side of the car, touching her head, her hand coming away bloody. The Good Samaritan called the police, called her mother, stayed until they came. The police took a report. "You were brave," the officer said. "Showed real courage. But courage without training just gets you hurt." After they left, after her mother took her home and bandaged her head and cried again, Reese lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling. Her father had been trained. He'd known how to fight, how to protect himself, how to protect others. And he was gone. But she was here, untrained, vulnerable, alive only because someone else had intervened. That night, Reese Hartford made a decision that would change everything. Her mother found the enlistment papers 2 months later, February 2013. Reese had just turned 18. No, Sarah Hartford's voice was ice. Absolutely not. Mom, I already lost your father. Her mother's control shattered like glass. I can't lose you too. Reese stood in their kitchen, holding the papers, trying to find words that would make her mother understand. Dad died protecting people, she said quietly. He died doing something that mattered. He died, Reese. That's what matters. He's gone. And I'm still here. I'm alive. But in that parking garage, Mom, I was helpless. Completely helpless. If that man had wanted to do more than steal my bag, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. Her mother turned away, gripping the kitchen counter. There are other ways to matter, she whispered. College, a career, a life that doesn't end in a folded flag. Dad taught me to stand up, to protect people who can't protect themselves. Reese set the papers on the table. I need to learn how to do that. Really do it, not just try. You're only 18. Dad enlisted at 18. Silence filled the kitchen. Outside, Portland was turning toward spring. Ice melting. Life returning. Finally, her mother spoke without turning around. If you do this, I can't watch. I can't go through it again. I know. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. Her mother turned then, tears streaming. You look so much like him, she said. It's like watching him leave all over again. They held each other in that kitchen for a long time. Neither of them knew that this was the last normal moment they'd have for years. That Reese would leave for basic training in 3 months. That she'd become someone her mother barely recognized. Someone harder, stronger. Someone forged by loss into something unbreakable. But on that February afternoon, they were just a mother and daughter, trying to hold on to each other while the world pulled them apart. Fort Benning, Georgia, July 2013. Hell Week, they called it. But it wasn't a week. It was 16 weeks of hell compressed into every single day. Wake at 0445. Physical training until your legs shook. Marching until your feet bled. Combat drills until the rifle felt like an extension of your body. And through it all, the drill sergeants screaming. Always screaming. Hartford, you think this is summer camp? No, drill sergeant. Then get your face in that dirt and give me 50. Reese Hartford, 18 years old, 5'4", 132 pounds, dropped and gave them 50. Then ran 5 miles. Then cleaned her rifle. Then did it all again. The other recruits were mostly male, mostly bigger. Many of them looked at her and the other women like they were taking up space that belonged to real soldiers. She proved them wrong every single day. By week 3, she was outrunning half the men. By week 6, she was consistently in the top 10 for rifle qualification. By week 10, when they started hand-to-hand combat training, something clicked. The instructor was a barrel-chested sergeant named Wade Brennan, 52 years old, gray at the temples, scars on his knuckles from a lifetime of teaching young soldiers how to fight and survive. He watched Reese during the first combatives drill, watched her get thrown by a male recruit who had 80 pounds on her, watched her get back up without complaint, watched her try again. After the drill, he pulled her aside. Hartford. Yes, drill sergeant. You fight like you're angry. She met his eyes, hard eyes, but not unkind. I am angry, drill sergeant. Good, he nodded slowly. Anger without skill is weakness. Anger with skill is power. You interested in learning the difference? Yes, drill sergeant. Then be at the gym at 2100 hours and don't tell anyone. This isn't official. That night, Reese found Drill Sergeant Brennan in an empty training room. He'd set up mats, changed into a plain t-shirt and cargo pants. Your father was military, he said. Not a question. Marine Corps, drill sergeant, killed in Afghanistan. Brennan was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. Thank you, Drill Sergeant. Is that why you're here? Following in his footsteps? Reese thought about the parking garage, about feeling helpless, about her mother's tears. I'm here because I need to know how to protect myself, Drill Sergeant, and maybe protect other people who can't. Brennan studied her face. You're small. You'll always be smaller than most of the soldiers you serve with. Smaller than most of the enemies you might face. He stepped onto the mat. That means you can't win with strength. You win with technique, precision, speed, making your opponent's size work against them. He gestured for her to attack him. Come at me, however you want. Reese hesitated. That's an order, Private. She charged, threw a punch. He wasn't there. She tried to grab him. He slipped away like smoke. She attempted a tackle, found herself on her back, staring at the ceiling, with no idea how she got there. Brennan looked down at her. Stand up, we've got a lot of work to do. For the next 6 weeks, 3 nights a week, Reese Hartford learned to fight. Brennan taught her techniques with strange names. Kuzushi, sabaki, osaikomi, Japanese words for concepts that transcended language. Breaking balance, body displacement, pinning control. In judo, Brennan explained, demonstrating a throw, you don't lift your opponent, you redirect their energy, use their momentum, their weight becomes a weapon against them. He taught her Krav Maga, Israeli military techniques designed for one purpose, survival. This isn't sport fighting, he said, showing her how to strike vulnerable targets. This is combat. You fight to end the threat. Eyes, throat, groin, knees. You fight to survive. He taught her wrestling, ground fighting, how to escape when someone bigger had you pinned, how to reverse positions, how to make a man twice your size panic when you locked in a submission. Most fighters are afraid of the ground, Brennan said, but if you're small, the ground is where size matters least. Technique matters most. Week after week, Reese absorbed it all. Her body learned what her mind couldn't process. Muscle memory built through endless repetition. Get thrown, get back up. Get thrown, get back up. Until getting thrown became impossible, until she was the one doing the throwing. One night during week 14, Brennan brought in another drill sergeant. 6 feet tall, 190, asked him to spar with Reese. Don't go easy on her, Brennan said. The sergeant didn't. He came at her hard. But Reese had learned. She slipped his punch, bagged his arm, pivoted, used his momentum, executed a perfect arm drag into a rear takedown. 8 seconds. The sergeant was on the mat, Reese controlling him from behind. Brennan clapped once. Hartford, you're a natural. But natural isn't enough. He helped the other sergeant up. You need to be exceptional. Why exceptional, drill sergeant? Because you're 5'4" in a 6-foot world. Exceptional is your only option. Reese nodded slowly. Then I'll be exceptional. I know you will. Your father would be proud. Those words hit harder than any punch. Reese felt her throat tighten, swallowed it down. Soldiers don't cry. Thank you, drill sergeant. Thank me by staying alive. That's all the thanks I need. Graduation day, September 2013. 19 years old. Reese Hartford stood in formation with her class, newly minted as an Army infantry soldier. One of the first women to complete infantry basic training. Her mother came, stood at the back of the ceremony. They didn't speak much. What was there to say? Sarah Hartford saw her daughter in uniform, looking so much like Thomas, and her heart broke all over again. But she was also proud. Terrified, but proud. After the ceremony, Wade Brennan found Reese. Fort Bragg, he said. That's where I'm heading next. Senior NCO position. If you get stationed there, look me up. We'll continue your training. I will, drill sergeant. Thank you for everything. Don't thank me yet. The real test comes next. He was right. Kunar Province, Afghanistan. FOB Blessing, June 2016. Reese Hartford, now 21 years old, 3 years into her Army career, crouched behind a HESCO barrier while Taliban rounds cracked overhead. The air smelled like burning diesel and dust and fear. Her squad was pinned down, 8 soldiers against 30 insurgents who'd ambushed their patrol 100 meters from the firebase. Their lieutenant was hit, leg wound, bad. Corpsman was working on him while the rest of them returned fire. Reese was squad designated marksman. Her M4 had an ACOG scope. She was supposed to pick off targets at distance, but the enemy was flanking, moving through a dried riverbed to their right. If they got position, the squad would be cut off from the FOB. Cut off meant dead. "Hartford!" Sergeant Miller, their squad leader, yelling over the gunfire. "We got fighters moving right flank. Can you see them?" Reese looked through her scope. 3 insurgents, moving fast. 60 meters in closing. "I see them. Drop them." She fired. Center mass. First target down. Adjusted. Fired. Second target down. Third target saw his friends fall and went to ground behind a rock outcropping. "He's behind cover," Reese yelled. "Then we got a problem." Miller fired a burst toward the main enemy position. "If he gets around that rock, he's got a line on the LT." Reese looked at the lieutenant, pale, going into shock. The corpsman had slowed the bleeding, but he needed a medevac, needed to live. She made a decision that would define the rest of her career. "I'm going after him." "Hartford, negative, stay in." But Reese was already moving, low, fast, using the terrain like Brennan had taught her. The insurgent behind the rock didn't see her coming. He was focused on the squad's position, waiting for a shot. She came around the rock from the side. 20 feet away, he heard her, turned, raised his AK-47. Reese's M4 jammed. The bolt locked back. A malfunction she'd trained for 1,000 times. Immediate action drill. Tap, rack, assess. But she didn't have time. The insurgent's rifle was coming up. She could see his eyes. Young, maybe her age. Terrified and committed. Everything Wade Brennan had taught her came flooding back. Not the rifle training, not the marksmanship, the other training. The late-night sessions, the throws and locks and strikes. She charged. The insurgent fired. Missed. She was too close, moving too fast. He tried to swing the rifle like a club. She executed a perfect Krav Maga disarm, stripped the weapon from his hands. He was bigger, stronger. He grabbed for her. She used his momentum, a judo technique called ogoshi, a hip throw. His back hit the ground hard. Wind knocked out of him. She could have shot him then, with his own weapon. But something stopped her. He was gasping, unarmed, beaten. She kicked his rifle away, covered him with her M4. Malfunction cleared. "Don't move," she said in broken Pashto. "Please don't move." He didn't move. 2 minutes later, the rest of the squad arrived, secured the insurgent, called for medevac. The lieutenant lived. The mission ended. Everyone went home. That night in her bunk at FOB Blessing, Reese Hartford stared at the ceiling and tried to process what had happened. She'd been face to face with someone trying to kill her, and she'd won. Not because of her rifle, because of technique, because of training, because Wade Brennan had taken the time to teach a small woman how to fight. She wrote him a letter that night, by hand, 4 pages. "Sergeant Brennan," it began, "I used the techniques you taught me today. They saved my life." The Bronze Star citation read, "For valorous action in combat operations against an armed enemy." It detailed her actions that day, the flanking insurgents, the malfunction, the hand-to-hand engagement. They pinned it on her chest in a ceremony at FOB Blessing 3 weeks later. The citation also mentioned the shrapnel wound in her shoulder from a different firefight. Purple Heart, Combat Infantry Badge. She was 21 years old. She'd been in Afghanistan for 6 months. She had a year left on her deployment. But more than the medals, more than the citations, What Reese carried with her was knowledge. Knowledge that when everything went wrong, when the rifle jammed and the enemy was right there, she had the skills to survive, to fight, to win. Her mother sent care packages, letters that said, "I'm proud of you, and please come home safe." Her father, she imagined, was watching from somewhere. Maybe proud, maybe worried, probably both. And Wade Brennan, back at Fort Bragg, received her letter and wrote back, "Hartford, you become what your father would be proud of. But don't get cocky. The fight is never over. Keep training, keep learning, and for God's sake, keep your rifle maintained. I'll see you when you get stateside. We've got more work to do." Fort Bragg, North Carolina, March 2017. After Afghanistan, after the medals and the fighting and the long nights in dusty outposts, Fort Bragg felt almost too peaceful, too clean, too safe. Reese Hartford, now 22, returned to the States with her unit. They gave her 30 days leave. She went home to Portland, saw her mother. They hugged for a long time in the airport. Neither of them cried. They'd both run out of tears years ago. Her mother looked older. Reese looked harder. "You're different," her mother said. "I am. Are you okay?" Reese thought about that question, about the firefights and the blood, and the way she still woke up sometimes thinking she was back there. About the fact that she'd put her hands on another human being and used violence to stop violence. "I'm okay," she said, which was mostly true. They had dinner, talked about small things, the house, the neighbors, Reese's younger cousin who was thinking about joining the Air Force. They didn't talk about Afghanistan much. What was there to say that a civilian mother could understand? That her daughter had learned to be dangerous? That she discovered a capacity for violence she never knew she had? That she was good at it? After 2 weeks, Reese cut her leave short, went back to Fort Bragg early. Her mother understood. "The war doesn't let you go, does it?" she asked at the airport. "No," Reese admitted. "It doesn't." At Fort Bragg, Reese was assigned to the Combat Instruction School, teaching new soldiers the basics of hand-to-hand combat. It was supposed to be a break after deployment, a chance to decompress. But Reese didn't want to decompress. She wanted to keep training, keep improving. The 6 months in Afghanistan had shown her gaps in her knowledge, areas where she'd gotten lucky instead of skilled. She found Wade Brennan the first week back. He was a master sergeant now, senior NCO in the training cadre. When she walked into his office, he looked up and smiled. "Hartford, I heard about Afghanistan. Good work." "Thank you, Master Sergeant. Bronze Star with Valor. That's no joke. Just did what I was trained to do, which is exactly what you were supposed to do." He leaned back in his chair. "You look tired." "I'm fine." "That's what they all say." He studied her face, the lines that hadn't been there before, the way her eyes scanned the room, looking for threats that weren't there. "PTSD counseling mandatory?" "Once a month, I go." "Good, don't skip it. Too many good soldiers wash out because they think asking for help is weakness." He stood. "Come on, let's go to the gym. I want to see if you kept up with your training." For the next 2 years, Reese Hartford worked as a combat instructor at Fort Bragg. Days were spent teaching basic techniques to new soldiers. Nights were spent training with Wade Brennan, learning more advanced systems, more refined techniques. She earned her Level 3 certification in modern Army combatives, the highest level. It required not just technical skill, but teaching ability, the capacity to break down complex techniques into simple steps that scared 19-year-olds could learn. She got good at it, really good. The male soldiers initially resisted learning from a woman, until they sparred with her, until she put them on the mat over and over. Then resistance became respect. The female soldiers looked at her like she was proof that they belonged, that size and strength weren't everything, that a 5'4" woman could not only survive in combat, but excel. Reese became known as the Ice Maiden. Not cruel, not mean, just controlled, calm, unshakable. When she demonstrated a technique, she did it perfectly. When she spoke with precision. No wasted words, no wasted motion. Wade Brennan watched her development with something like paternal pride. "You've come a long way from that angry 18-year-old I met at Basic," he said one night after training. "Still angry," Reese said, unwrapping her hands. "But now you know what to do with it." He smiled. "Your father would be proud. I'm proud." Reese looked at him. This man who'd taken time to train her when he didn't have to, who'd seen something in her and cultivated it, who'd become the closest thing to a father figure she'd had since Thomas Hartford died. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. Don't thank me yet. I've got plans for you." Spring 2019, Reese Hartford, now 24 years old, 5 years into her military career, sat in Colonel Dutch Ramsey's office at Fort Bragg. Colonel Ramsey was 61, a Gulf War infantry officer who'd commanded companies and battalions and survived the kind of combat that made old soldiers quiet. He looked at Reese Hartford with appraising eyes. "Specialist Hartford, you're being considered for Ranger School." Reese's heart jumped. Ranger School, the premier leadership course in the Army. Only 5 women had graduated in the school's history. "Sir, I'm honored, but you're concerned about the attention, the pressure, the fact that every mistake you make will be magnified because you're a woman." "Yes, sir. Valid concerns." Ramsey leaned forward. "But here's the reality. Women have proven they can serve in combat roles. They've proven they can meet the same standards as men. But there's still resistance. Still dinosaurs who think you don't belong." He pulled out a file. Her file. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Combat Infantry Badge, Combat Instructor Certification, Level 3 Combatives. Your evaluations from Afghanistan are exceptional. He closed the file. "You've earned consideration for Ranger School, but we need to make sure you're ready. Not just physically, mentally. Can you handle the scrutiny?" "I can, sir." "We'll see. In October, you're leading a major demonstration. 282 soldiers from multiple battalions. Hand-to-hand combat techniques. Master Sergeant Brennan recommended you personally. I won't let you down, sir." "I know you won't. Because if you do, you set back every woman trying to serve." He stood, extended his hand. "Make us proud, Hartford." She shook his hand, left his office, felt the weight of what was coming. But there was something else she didn't know yet, a medical issue that had been developing quietly. 2 weeks later, routine physical examination. The doctor frowned at her x-ray. "Specialist Hartford, the shrapnel fragment in your left shoulder has migrated. It's now sitting very close to a nerve cluster." Reese's stomach dropped. "How close?" "Close enough that we need to remove it surgically, soon, within 6 months." "After the October demonstration?" The doctor hesitated. "It's not life-threatening immediately, but the longer we wait, the higher the risk of permanent nerve damage. So after October, against my medical advice, but yes, after October." Reese left the medical center knowing that the demonstration in October might be her last major event before surgery, before months of recovery, before potentially losing her chance at Ranger School. She had to make it count. 282 witnesses, one chance to prove that skill mattered more than size, that women belonged in combat roles, that Reese Hartford was everything she trained to become. What she didn't know was that among those 282 soldiers would be a man named Garrett Kane, a man with his own demons, his own anger, his own need to prove something. And when their paths crossed in that circle, with all those witnesses watching, something would break that couldn't be fixed. But that was still months away. For now, Reese Hartford trained, prepared, made sure her techniques were flawless, made sure she was ready. Because exceptional was her only option, and she intended to be exceptional. Amarillo, Texas, 2009. Garrett Kane, 15 years old, sat at the dinner table and watched his father destroy his sister's dreams. "Absolutely not," Marcus Kane said, setting down his fork with finality. No daughter of mine is joining the military. Mackenzie Kane, 18, fresh out of high school, held the Air Force recruitment brochure like it was a lifeline. Dad, I've already talked to the recruiter. I can leave for basic in... You can leave for nothing. Marcus's voice was steel. Women don't belong in uniform. They belong at home, building families. That's how it's always been. That's not how it is anymore. Mackenzie's voice rose. Women serve in... Women get themselves hurt, get their fellow soldiers killed. They're weak, emotional, a liability. Garrett watched his sister's face crumble, watched her look to their mother for support. But Ellen Kane just stared at her plate, silent, complicit. Mackenzie looked at Garrett. You believe this? Garrett was 15. His father was his hero, a man who worked the oil rigs, strong, tough, traditional, everything Garrett wanted to be. Dad's right, Garrett said. The words felt wrong even as he spoke them. You just get hurt. Mackenzie's eyes filled with tears. You're both wrong, and one day you'll see it. She left the table. 3 months later, she left the house, moved to Dallas, took a job at a gas station, stopped calling. Marcus Kane acted like he'd never had a daughter, and Garrett learned that women who stepped out of their place needed to be put back in it. It was a lesson that would destroy him. 6 years later, 2015, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Corporal Garrett Kane, 21 years old, fresh from basic training, reported to the 82nd Airborne Division. Big, strong, good at the physical aspects of soldiering, but his attitude toward female soldiers raised red flags from day one. Private Amber Cross noticed it first. She was in his unit, combat medic, competent and professional. But Garrett treated her like she was playing dress-up. You shouldn't be here, he said during a training exercise. This is men's work. I'm doing the same job you are, Kane. For now, until you get someone killed. Amber reported it. Nothing happened. Boys will be boys, his sergeant said. He'll grow out of it. He didn't. 2017, the incident. During combatives training, Garrett was paired with Amber Cross. She was good, better than him actually. Used technique to overcome his size advantage. Put him on the mat twice. His pride couldn't handle it. The third time, when she went for an armbar, he resisted. Hard. Violently. Heard something pop. Amber screamed. Her shoulder dislocated. Accident, Garrett said to the instructor. She didn't tap fast enough. Amber, through tears of pain, he did it on purpose. Investigation. Witness statements. Everyone said it happened fast. Hard to tell. Garrett's friends backed his story. Case dismissed. Accident during training. Amber got physical therapy. Never quite trusted male soldiers again. Eventually left the Army early. Hostile work environment, she cited in her exit interview. Garrett got a verbal warning. Nothing on his permanent record. He learned that he could hurt women and get away with it. Spring 2019. Garrett Kane, now 25, applied for Ranger School. He'd been in the Army 4 years, thought he was ready. The review board thought differently. Application denied. Pattern of disciplinary issues. Multiple incidents of inappropriate conduct toward female soldiers. Reminder, additional training and counseling before reapplication. Garrett sat in his barracks room, staring at the rejection letter. Rage building. He'd followed the rules his father taught him. Been strong, been tough, refused to coddle weakness. And now they were punishing him for it. 2 weeks later, he heard the news. Specialist Reese Hartford was being considered for Ranger School. A woman, 5'4", probably couldn't do a single pull-up without assistance. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. And when he heard she was leading the October demonstration, Garrett made a decision. He'd volunteer. He'd show everyone what happened when women tried to compete with real soldiers. He'd prove his father right. He'd put Reese Hartford in her place. 6 years after failing to protect his sister from their father's toxic beliefs, Garrett Kane was about to make the same mistake in front of 282 witnesses. But this time, the woman wouldn't run. This time, she'd fight back. October 15th, 2019. Dawn broke over Fort Bragg like any other Tuesday morning. By noon, it would be a day nobody would forget. Reese Hartford woke at 0500 hours in her barracks room. Small, Spartan, a bed, a desk, a footlocker. On the desk sat a framed photo of her father in his Marine dress uniform. Next to it, his dog tags. She'd carried them through basic training, through Afghanistan, through every hard day since he died. She picked them up now, let the metal warm in her palm. "Give me strength, Dad," she whispered. Then she got dressed, laced her boots, checked herself in the mirror. The uniform was perfect. It had to be. Today, everything had to be perfect. Her left shoulder twinged, the shrapnel, migrating slowly toward the nerve. Surgery scheduled for December. 3 months away. She just had to make it through today. Outside, Fort Bragg was waking up. PT formations running in the pre-dawn darkness. The smell of diesel from the motor pool. The sound of helicopters starting their morning flights. Normal. Routine. But Reese's heart was hammering. 282 soldiers would be watching her today. 282 pairs of eyes judging whether a woman could teach men how to fight, whether she belonged in this uniform, whether everything she'd worked for, everything she'd survived, actually meant something. She walked to the training area alone, needed the time to think, to prepare. What she didn't know was that 3 buildings away, Garrett Kane was also awake, also preparing, but preparing for something very different. Garrett Kane had barely slept. He'd spent most of the night drinking beer in his room with 2 buddies, talking about the demonstration, about Reese Hartford, about how women were ruining the Army. "She's getting recommended for Ranger School," one of his friends said. "Can you believe that?" Garrett felt his jaw clench. He'd applied for Ranger School 6 months ago, got rejected. Pattern of disciplinary issues, they'd said. Basically told him he was too much of a problem. And now some 5'4" woman who'd gotten lucky in Afghanistan was being considered? "It's all politics," Garrett said, crushing the beer can. "Diversity hire bullshit." "You should volunteer today," another buddy suggested. "Show everyone what happens when size and strength meet technique." Garrett smiled. A mean smile. "Maybe I will." He'd been thinking about it all week, about stepping into that circle, about showing Reese Hartford and everyone watching that women didn't belong teaching men how to fight, that traditional values, traditional strength still mattered, about proving his father right, that women were weak, that his sister Mackenzie had been right to be stopped from serving. Even though deep down, in a place he wouldn't examine, Garrett knew he was wrong, knew his sister had every right to serve, knew Reese Hartford had earned her place. But admitting that would mean admitting his entire worldview was broken. And Garrett Kane would rather break someone else than admit he was broken. So he got dressed, laced his boots, looked at himself in the mirror. Today he decided he'd prove everyone who doubted him wrong, even if it meant crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. The parade ground at Fort Bragg could hold 1,000 soldiers easily. This morning, as the sun climbed higher and the October heat began to build, 282 soldiers from multiple battalions gathered in a large circle on the packed dirt. Master Sergeant Wade Brennan stood at the center, checking his watch. 8:15 hours, 15 minutes until the demonstration began. He looked around at the gathering crowd, saw the mix of attitudes, some soldiers eager to learn, some skeptical, some openly hostile. That last group worried him, because Brennan had heard the rumors, heard that Corporal Garrett Kane had been talking about volunteering, about showing the truth about women in combat. Brennan had pulled Kane's file yesterday, didn't like what he saw. 3 documented incidents of harassment, multiple warnings, Article 15 for insubordination, protected by senior NCOs who thought he was just rough around the edges. Brennan knew men like Kane, had seen them before. Men who confused aggression with strength, who felt threatened by competent women, who would do something stupid to prove a point. He'd warned Reese last night, "If Kane volunteers, I can refuse him," Brennan had said. "No," Reese replied. "If you refuse him, it looks like I'm afraid, like I need protection." There's a difference between protection and common sense. "I can handle it, Wade. I've handled worse in Afghanistan." Now, watching the crowd gather, Brennan wasn't so sure. Afghanistan was combat, clear enemies, clear rules of engagement. This was different. This was politics and egos and 282 witnesses who would interpret everything through their own biases. But orders were orders. The demonstration would proceed. At 0820, Colonel Dutch Ramsey arrived, stood at the back of the crowd, didn't announce himself, just watched. His presence raised the stakes even higher. At 0825, Reese Hartford walked onto the parade ground. She was in full combat uniform, boots polished, sleeves rolled to regulation length, hair pulled back in a tight bun. She moved with the controlled precision of someone who'd learned to make every motion count. The crowd parted for her. Some soldiers nodded respect. Others whispered to each other. All of them watched. She reached the center where Brennan stood. "Ready?" he asked quietly. "Ready." Brennan turned to face the assembled soldiers, raised his voice to carry across the parade ground. "Attention!" 282 soldiers snapped to attention. "At ease. Find your positions and listen up." The soldiers formed a large circle. Reese stood at the center, alone, small against the backdrop of all those watching faces. Brennan began his introduction. "Today's demonstration covers modern Army combatives, hand-to-hand techniques designed for close-quarters combat when your rifle's empty and the enemy's right in front of you." He gestured to Reese. "Your instructor is Specialist Reese Hartford, combat veteran, Afghanistan, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, Combat Infantry Badge, Level 3 Combatives Instructor." A few appreciative murmurs, but also some scoffs. Brennan heard them. "I know what some of you are thinking," he continued. "She's 5'4", 132 pounds. What can she teach us?" He paused. "Let that hang. I'm 6'1", 205, 37 years of service, Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan. And I'm telling you right now, this soldier can put me on the ground in under 10 seconds. He looked around the circle, made eye contact with the skeptics. Because combat isn't about size, it's about skill, speed, precision, using your opponent's strength against them. Specialist Hartford represents what this army needs to understand, that making eye contact, showing no fear. Who wants to learn how to survive? The first hour went perfectly. Reese worked with cooperative volunteers, demonstrated each technique with precision, explained the mechanics clearly, showed how a smaller fighter could defeat a larger one through proper application of physics and anatomy. Technique 1. Deflection and counter against a haymaker punch. She showed how to redirect the energy, enter the opponent's space, and execute a takedown using their own momentum. Technique 2. Escape from a rear bear hug. How to drop your weight, strike vulnerable targets, and reverse the position. Technique 3. Arm drag to rear control. Gaining positional dominance that negated size advantages. Technique 4. Ground fighting basics. Guard passes, mount escapes, submission setups. Technique 5. Guillotine defense and reversal. Because every successful technique Reese demonstrated was a rejection of everything he believed. Every throw she executed was proof that his father had been wrong, that his sister should have been allowed to serve, that women weren't weak, and Garrett Kane couldn't handle that truth. During a water break at 0930 hours, he made his first move. "It's all choreographed," he said, loud enough for 20 soldiers around him to hear. "Wouldn't work against real resistance." The dislocated shoulder he'd caused and called an accident. Reese saw the warning. understood it, made a decision. She walked toward the section where Kane stood. The crowd quieted. "Corporal Kane," she said clearly, "you seem to have concerns about the effectiveness of these techniques." Garrett was surprised she'd addressed him directly, recovered quickly. "Just questioning if they'd work against real resistance, ma'am." "That's a valid concern." Reese stopped 5 feet from him. "Would you like to volunteer? Test these techniques against genuine resistance?" The parade ground went silent. 282 soldiers held their breath. This was the moment, the challenge, the line drawn in the dirt. Wade Brennan immediately stepped forward. "Hartford, Master Sergeant," Reese said, not taking her eyes off Kane. "Corporal Kane raises an important point. If these techniques only work with cooperation, they're not combat effective. Let's demonstrate their application against realistic opposition." Brennan knew this was a mistake, knew it in his bones. But Reese was right about one thing. Refusing would look like she needed protection. He looked at Colonel Ramsey. The colonel's face was unreadable. He gave a slight nod. Let it proceed. Brennan turned back to Kane. "Corporal Kane, step forward." Garrett felt every eye on him, felt the weight of the moment. He could back down, should back down, but backing down meant admitting he was wrong, meant humiliation. "Yes, Master Sergeant." He walked to the center of the circle, to where Reese stood waiting. 6'2" to 5'4", 218 pounds to 132, man to woman, traditional strength to modern technique. 282 witnesses watched. The demonstration was about to become something else entirely. Brennan set the parameters clearly. "This remains a controlled demonstration. You will execute attacks as directed. Specialist Hartford will demonstrate appropriate defensive responses. Understood?" "Yes, Master Sergeant," Reese said. "Yes, Master Sergeant," Garrett said. But the way he said it, the tone, Brennan heard the edge. "Corporal Kane, I need to hear you acknowledge. This is training, controlled aggression within safety protocols." Garrett met his eyes. "Understood, Master Sergeant." It wasn't quite insubordination, but it wasn't quite obedience either. Brennan had a bad feeling, but the demonstration had to proceed. "Begin with Technique 1, standard overhand right. Hartford will demonstrate deflection and counter." Garrett set himself, raised his right hand, threw a slow, telegraph punch as instructed. Reese executed the defense perfectly, deflected the punch, entered his space. Arm drag. Garrett stumbled, off balance. She could have taken him down but released per protocol. Textbook. Garrett got up. His face was red. From exertion, from embarrassment, from anger. "That was because I went easy," he said. Not quite loud enough for Brennan to officially hear, but loud enough for the soldiers nearby. Several of them shifted uncomfortably. "Again," Brennan ordered. Technique 2. Realistic speed this time, but controlled impact. Garrett threw a combination. Jab, cross, hook. Faster than instructed, harder than necessary. Reese adjusted, slipped the jab, parried the cross, ducked the hook. Her head movement was fluid, practiced. Kane's punches cut air. She clinched, controlled his posture, executed a lateral drop, a judo throw. Garrett hit the mat hard, harder than he expected. Reese applied a scarf hold, pinning position. Garrett was face down, his arm controlled, unable to move. He tapped immediately, the universal signal of submission. Reese released, stood, offered her hand to help him up. Garrett ignored it, got up on his own. The crowd murmured, some impressed, some concerned, all sensing the tension building. Garrett was breathing hard, not from physical exertion, from humiliation. Every second in this circle, every technique that worked, was another crack in his worldview. Another piece of evidence that he was wrong, that his father was wrong, that Mackenzie should have been allowed to serve. And Garrett Kane couldn't accept that, wouldn't accept that. His pride, already wounded, began to curdle into something dangerous. Brennan saw it happening, saw the shift in Kane's posture, the way his jaw clenched, the way his hands formed fists even at rest. "That's enough demonstration," Brennan said. "Point's been made. Kane, return to—" "Master Sergeant," Garrett's voice cut through, louder than appropriate. "Request permission for one more round." Brennan's instinct was to refuse, should have refused. "Negative, Corporal. We've established technique effectiveness." "Sir, with respect." Garrett turned to face the crowd, playing to them now. "Soldiers need to see these techniques against maximum resistance. Real combat intensity. Otherwise, what's the point?" Some soldiers nodded, others looked uncomfortable. All of them waited to see what would happen. Reese felt the moment crystallizing, knew that Brennan would refuse if she didn't speak up, knew that refusing would look like fear, like she couldn't handle real resistance. "I'm willing, Master Sergeant," she said, "if it helps demonstrate combat application." Brennan looked at her, then at Kane, then at Colonel Ramsey, still watching from the back. The colonel gave a slight nod. Let it proceed. Brennan made his decision, hoping it wasn't a mistake. "Controlled maximum resistance," he said firmly. "Kane, you step 1 inch out of line, you're finished. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Master Sergeant." "I need to hear you say it. This is still training. Controlled techniques, safety protocols remain in effect." Garrett met his eyes. Something cold there. Something that made Brennan's combat instincts scream warning. "I understand, Master Sergeant. Controlled techniques, safety protocols." The words were right. The tone was wrong. But 282 soldiers were watching. The colonel was watching. The demonstration had to proceed. Brennan stepped back, gave them space. Reese and Garrett faced each other in the center of the circle. The October sun beat down. The parade ground was silent except for the distant sound of helicopters and diesel engines. 282 witnesses. One moment that would change everything. Garrett removed his protective headgear. Direct violation of safety protocols. "Kane," Brennan barked, "gear stays on." "Let's make this realistic, Master Sergeant." Garrett tossed the headgear aside. "Corporal, that's a direct order. Put the gear back on." Garrett ignored him, focused on Reese. His stance changed. No longer the cooperative posture of a training partner. Combat stance now. Weight forward, hands up, aggressive. He started circling her, like a predator, like this was a fight, not a demonstration. The crowd felt it, the shift. Several soldiers took involuntary steps back. Wade Brennan moved toward them. "Kane, stand down. You think you belong in Ranger School?" Garrett's voice carried across the parade ground. Harsh, angry. "You think you can compete with real warriors?" Reese kept her composure, stayed centered. "This demonstration isn't about Ranger School, Corporal. It's about everything." Garrett was circling faster. "Women like you, playing soldier, taking spots from men who've earned them, who deserve them." "I earned my Bronze Star in combat, Corporal Kane. What medals do you have?" It was a mistake. She knew it as soon as the words left her mouth. Knew she'd struck his ego at its most vulnerable point. Garrett's face twisted. "You got lucky in Afghanistan. Here, against a real man, you're nothing." Brennan was moving now. "Corporal Kane, you are done. Step out of the circle. Now." But Garrett wasn't listening anymore. Something had broken inside him. All the anger at his sister, at his father, at women who succeeded where he'd failed. All of it focused on the small woman in front of him. "Women like you destroyed my family," he snarled. "My sister wanted to serve. I stopped her because I knew this would happen. She'd become like you, some little girl pretending to be strong, pretending to be a warrior." Reese felt ice in her veins. "You stopped your sister from serving her country?" "I protected her," Garrett's voice rose. "Protected her from becoming a disgrace, from taking a job she couldn't handle, from becoming you." 282 soldiers watched in stunned silence. This had gone far beyond a training demonstration. "You need to learn your fucking place, bitch!" The words hit Reese like a physical blow, not because they hurt, but because she'd heard them before. Portland, the parking garage, age 17. The man who'd attacked her had said the exact same words before he tried to hurt her. And suddenly she wasn't at Fort Bragg anymore. She was back in that garage, helpless, alone, terrified. Then she was back, present, focused. And Garrett Kane was winding up his right arm for a punch that had nothing to do with training and everything to do with genuine violence. Brennan was running toward them. "Kane, stand down!" But Brennan was 15 feet away, too far. Colonel Ramsey was reaching for his radio, too slow. Private Lucas Garrett, standing in the crowd, pulled out his phone, started recording, against regulations. But something told him this evidence would matter. Around the circle, at least 40 other soldiers did the same. 40 different angles, 40 witnesses who knew they were watching something that would change everything. 282 soldiers watched in horror as Garrett Kane threw a full-power right haymaker aimed directly at Reese Hartford's face. If it connected, it would break her jaw, might break her skull, might kill her. Everything Reese Hartford had learned in 6 years of training condensed into the next 2.7 seconds. And when it was over, nothing would ever be the same. Time slowed, the way it does in combat, in car accidents, in moments when life and death balance on a razor's edge. Garrett's fist came toward her face. Full speed, full power, 218 pounds of muscle and rage behind it. Tears streamed down his face as he threw it. Not tears of sadness, tears of desperation, of a man whose entire worldview was crumbling and who could only respond with violence. Reese's training took over. Not conscious thought, pure muscle memory built through thousands of repetitions with Wade Brennan in empty gyms late at night. She moved. 0 to 0.5 seconds. Recognition and evasion. She read the punch from his shoulder, saw the trajectory, executed Tai Sabaki, body rotation, 6 inches to the left. Garrett's fist passed 2 inches from her face, close enough that she felt the wind. Close enough that several soldiers in the crowd gasped, thinking it had connected. 0.5 to 1.0 seconds. Interception and control. As his arm extended past her, Reese's hands shot out. Left hand grabbed his wrist. Right hand grabbed the crook of his elbow. 2-point control. Textbook. She pulled. Kuzushi. Breaking balance. Garrett's momentum carried him forward past his center of gravity. His feet were moving, but his body was already falling. 1.0 to 1.7 seconds. Entry and setup. Reese pivoted 180 degrees, stepped under his extended arm, his arm now across her chest. She planted her right foot. Immovable base. Garrett realized the danger, tried to pull back, tried to reset. Too late. 1.7 to 2.3 seconds. The lock. Ude Garami, the entangled arm lock. Her right hand gripped her left wrist, his arm trapped between. Figure 4 configuration. Pressure on the elbow joint. Garrett was on his toes, trying to relieve pressure. Okay, I'm done. But he was fighting it, resisting, trying to pull his arm free instead of tapping out, instead of submitting. And Reese, operating on pure instinct, pure training, pure survival mode, applied leverage. 2.3 to 2.7 seconds. The break. The physics were simple and terrible. Garrett's 218 pounds pulling back, Reese's 132 pounds leveraging forward, her body as the fulcrum, his elbow as the breaking point. Combined force on the joint, 850 pounds. The structural limit of the human elbow, 600 pounds. The sound came first. Crack, snap. 2 distinct noises happening so close together, they almost seemed like one. The ulna fracturing, then the radius following. The sound carried across the entire parade ground, carried to every single one of the 282 witnesses. A sound that shouldn't exist. A sound that meant something had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. Garrett Kane's scream followed. A sound of pure agony, primal, inhuman. The scream of someone whose body had just betrayed them in the worst possible way. He collapsed, fell to his knees, right arm hanging at an impossible angle, not bent at the elbow, bent in the middle of the forearm, where bones don't bend. Blood soaked through his uniform sleeve. Compound fracture. The broken bone had punctured through skin and fabric. Oh God, she broke it. She fucking broke my arm. Oh God, it's broken. Call medic, call medic. Reese released immediately, stepped back, hands up, automatic defensive posture. She looked at her hands. They were shaking. Looked at Garrett on the ground, looked at the blood. Her face was a mask of shock and horror. He was going to... She couldn't finish the sentence. 282 soldiers stood in stunned silence. Several had stepped backward. 4 female soldiers had their hands over their mouths. 2 younger soldiers had turned away. 1 private was bent over, vomiting. The silence was absolute except for Garrett's screaming and the distant sound of Fort Bragg continuing its normal operations. Unaware that everything had just changed, Wade Brennan reached them first, dropped beside Garrett, pulled his radio. Medic to parade ground sector 3, compound fracture, emergency, code red. He looked up at Reese, saw the shock on her face. Specialist Hartford, step back. Reese stepped back, but she couldn't stop staring at Garrett, at his arm, at what she'd done. Brennan turned to the crowd. Everyone back, give us space, now. The circle of soldiers expanded, but nobody left. All of them stood frozen, watching, witnesses to something that would define their service, that would change how they thought about training, about violence, about what happened when pride and skill collided. Colonel Dutch Ramsey walked through the crowd. They parted for him instantly. He reached the center, looked at Garrett writhing on the ground, at Reese standing in shock, at Brennan trying to control the situation. His face was unreadable. Master Sergeant, report. Sir, Corporal Kane attacked Specialist Hartford with clear intent to cause serious bodily harm. She defended herself using trained techniques. The injury resulted from his resistance to a properly applied submission hold. Ramsey looked at Garrett, then at Reese, then at the 282 faces surrounding them. Secure this area. No one leaves until statements are taken. All personnel will surrender phones and recording devices immediately. But even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late. Because all around the circle, soldiers had their phones out, had been recording. At least 40 different angles of the break, of the scream, of everything. By evening, the videos would leak to military forums. By morning, to social media. By afternoon, to national news. This moment, this sound, this break, would define the conversation about women in combat for years to come. But right now, in this moment, all Reese Hartford could think about was the sound. That terrible crack snap that would echo in her nightmares for the rest of her life. 2 medics arrived at a run, dropped beside Garrett, began their assessment. Compound fracture, radius and ulna both, severe displacement, bone fragments visible, significant bleeding, applying pressure bandage. Sir, can you feel your fingers? Garrett's screaming had reduced to moans. No, can't feel. Oh God, my arm. Possible radial nerve damage. We need emergency transport, now. They loaded him onto a stretcher. As they carried him past Reese, his eyes found hers. And what she saw there wasn't just pain. It was fear. Real, genuine fear. For the first time in his life, Garrett Kane had encountered someone he couldn't bully, couldn't intimidate, couldn't defeat through size and aggression. And it had cost him everything. They carried him away. The ambulance's siren started. faded into the distance, leaving Reese Hartford standing in the center of a circle of 282 witnesses, knowing that her life had just changed forever. Knowing that no matter what the investigation concluded, no matter what the videos showed, she would always be the woman who broke a man's arm in front of hundreds of people. The sound would follow her. The sight of his arm at that impossible angle would haunt her. But deep down beneath the shock and horror was something else. Relief. Because Garrett Kane had been coming to hurt her, really hurt her, and she'd stopped him. She'd survived. Just like Wade Brennan had taught her, just like her father would have wanted. But the price of survival was standing right there in front of her, written in blood on the Fort Bragg parade ground, witnessed by 282 pairs of eyes that would never forget what they'd seen. The demonstration was over. The reckoning was just beginning. The silence in Colonel Dutch Ramsey's office was suffocating. Reese Hartford sat in a straight-back chair, still in her combat uniform, still seeing Garrett Kane's arm bent at that impossible angle every time she blinked. Her hands had stopped shaking, but she could still feel the moment of resistance before the break. That fraction of a second when bone fought leverage and lost. Wade Brennan stood against the wall, present as her supervisor but not permitted to speak during the formal interview. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes kept finding Reese, checking on her, making sure she was holding together. Captain Rick Donnelly sat across from her with a digital recorder and a legal pad, the base legal officer. 48 hours ago, Reese hadn't known his name. Now he would determine whether she faced court-martial or exoneration. Colonel Ramsey sat behind his desk, silent, watching. Specialist Hartford, Donnelly began, his voice professionally neutral. I need you to describe, in your own words, the events that led to Corporal Kane's injury. Reese took a breath, forced herself to speak clearly, professionally, like she was reporting a contact in Afghanistan rather than the worst moment of her life. The demonstration was proceeding normally. Multiple techniques successfully demonstrated with cooperative volunteers. During a water break at approximately 09:30 hours, Corporal Kane made statements questioning the effectiveness of the techniques against genuine resistance. What exactly did he say? He stated that the techniques were choreographed and wouldn't work in real combat situations. And how did you respond? I asked if he wanted to volunteer to test the techniques against realistic opposition. Donnelly made a note. Why did you do that? Because his concern was valid for training purposes. If techniques only work with cooperation, they lack combat value. I believed demonstrating their application against genuine resistance would enhance the training value of the demonstration. It sounded good, professional, but Reese knew the truth was more complicated. She'd been proving a point, showing that she wasn't afraid, that women could handle aggression. Pride, that's what it had been. And pride had led to Garrett Kane screaming on the ground. Describe Corporal Kane's behavior during the third engagement. He removed his protective headgear against Master Sergeant Brennan's direct orders. He assumed an aggressive combat stance inconsistent with demonstration protocols. He made personal statements about women in the military, about his sister. He became verbally aggressive. What did he say specifically? Reese's jaw tightened. He said women like me were ruining the Army, that I was taking spots from real warriors, that his sister wanted to serve and he'd stopped her because she would become like me. A disgrace. And then he said I needed to learn my place, called me a bitch, and attacked. Describe the attack. Full power right haymaker, aimed at my face. No demonstration protocol, no controlled technique, genuine intent to cause serious bodily harm. How did you know his intent? His eyes, sir, his body language, his verbal threats, and the force behind the strike. If that punch had connected, it would have caused severe facial trauma, possible skull fracture. Donnelly leaned forward. Did you intend to break Corporal Kane's arm? The question hung in the air. The crucial question. The one that would determine everything. Reese met his eyes. No, sir. I intended to stop an immediate threat to my safety using techniques I was trained to employ in life-threatening situations. The break occurred because Corporal Kane resisted the submission hold instead of tapping out. He fought against the technique while it was being applied. Could you have released the hold before the break occurred? This was the knife edge, the moment where truth and self-preservation diverged. No, sir. The technique progressed in approximately 2.7 seconds from initial contact to structural failure. I applied the hold, he resisted, the break occurred. There was the same techniques that saved my life in Afghanistan when my rifle malfunctioned and I faced a Taliban fighter in close quarters. Do you feel remorse for Corporal Kane's injury? Reese paused, chose her words carefully. I regret that the situation escalated to violence. I regret that Corporal Kane felt compelled to attack me. I regret the injury he sustained. But I don't regret defending myself against a legitimate threat. Donnelly stopped the recorder. That's all for now. You're confined to barracks pending investigation. No contact with witnesses. No statements to media. Understood? Yes, sir. Dismissed. Reese stood, saluted, walked to the door. Hartford. She turned. Colonel Ramsey had spoken for the first time. Sir? You did what you were trained to do. Remember that. It wasn't absolution. It wasn't approval. But it was something. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. She left. Wade Brennan followed her out. In the hall, now facing potential court-martial for defending herself. Then we fight, but it won't come to that. I was there. I saw everything. 282 witnesses saw everything. The truth is on your side. The truth doesn't always matter. It will this time. I'll make sure of it. They walked in silence back to the barracks. Passing soldiers stared. Word had spread. Everyone knew. Everyone had an opinion. Reese felt their eyes on her, felt the weight of judgment, hero to some, villain to others, symbol to everyone. She just wanted to be a soldier. Now she was something else entirely. The hospital room at Womack Army Medical Center smelled like antiseptic and failure. Garrett Kane lay in the bed, right arm in a full cast from shoulder to fingertips. Morphine drip keeping the pain to a dull roar instead of a screaming agony. But the physical pain wasn't the worst part. The worst part was knowing his career was over. Knowing his arm might never work right again. Knowing that he'd attacked a fellow soldier in front of nearly 300 witnesses and lost. Lost badly. Lost publicly. Lost permanently. The surgeon had been blunt. You have compound fractures of both the radius and ulna. We've installed 2 titanium plates and 8 screws. The radial nerve was severed. We've done microsurgery to repair it, but there's only a 50% chance you'll regain full sensation and motor control in your hand. 50%. Coin flip odds. In even best case scenario, he'd never pass a physical fitness test again. Never deploy. Never serve in a combat role. At 25 years old, Garrett Kane's military career was effectively over. And the worst part, the absolutely worst part, was knowing it was his own fault. He'd crossed the line, removed safety equipment, ignored direct orders, attacked a fellow soldier. In front of witnesses, on camera. The videos were everywhere now. He'd seen them on his phone before the MPS confiscated it. Seen himself wind up that punch. Seen the impact that never came. Seen Reese Hartford move like water and catch his arm, and then that terrible sound. 40 different angles, all showing the same thing. Garrett Kane attacking, Reese Hartford defending, clear as day. His father had called. That conversation had been worse than the surgery. What the hell were you thinking? His father's voice on the phone, angry, disappointed. You attacked a woman? In front of everyone? Dad, she was showing off, acting like women belong. She's a decorated combat veteran, Garrett. Bronze Star. She earned her place. You didn't earn the right to attack her. Garrett had been stunned into silence. His father, the man who'd taught him that women were weak, that they needed protection, that they didn't belong in men's spaces. You sound like you're taking her side. I'm taking reality's side. His father's voice softened. Son, I raised you wrong. I taught you things that aren't true, and now you're paying the price for my mistakes. What are you talking about? Your sister, Mackenzie, I stopped her from joining the Air Force because I thought I was protecting her. I thought women couldn't handle military service. I was wrong. She's 28 years old now, working a dead-end job, and she hates me for stealing her dream. Garrett closed his eyes. Dad, and you believed what I taught you. Believed it so much you attacked a woman for proving me wrong, for being what Mackenzie wanted to be, what she deserved to be. I don't understand. I know, and that's my fault. But listen to me now. What you did was wrong. What I taught you was wrong. And if you want any kind of future, you need to accept that and figure out who you're going to be now that everything you believed has been proven false. The call had ended. Garrett had stared at the ceiling of the hospital room and felt his entire worldview crumbling. Now, 3 hours later, lying in the dark, he thought about Reese Hartford, about the moment before he threw that punch, the look in her eyes. Not fear, not weakness, determination, skill, confidence. She'd known she could stop him, had known it with absolute certainty, and she'd been right. A nurse came in, checked his vitals, adjusted his morphine. How's the pain? She asked. Manageable. That's good. You've got a visitor. Your sister's here. Want me to send her in? Garrett's heart stopped. Mackenzie? That's what she said. Should I? Yes, send her in. The nurse left. Garrett tried to sit up. Couldn't. His arm was immobilized. He felt helpless, weak. The door opened. Mackenzie Kane walked in. She was 28 now. Garrett hadn't seen her in 6 years. She looked good, strong, confident. Everything he tried to prevent her from becoming. Hey, she said. Hey. They looked at each other. 6 years of silence. 6 years of resentment. 6 years of a brother who'd helped their father destroy his sister's dreams. Dad called me, Mackenzie said. Told me what happened. I was at work in Dallas. Drove straight here. Why? Because you're my brother. And because... She pulled up a chair, sat down. Because I understand. Understand what? Why you did it. You attacked that woman, Reese Hartford, because seeing her succeed broke something in your brain. Broke the lie Dad taught us. That women are weak, that we don't belong, that we can't compete. Garrett looked away. I messed up. You did, but you're not the only one responsible. Dad is. I am too in a way. I should have fought harder, should have joined anyway. Instead, I let him control my life, and I resent you for it even though you were just a kid. I could have supported you. You were 15. What were you going to do? Something. Anything. Garrett felt tears building, fought them, failed. Kenzie, I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. You should have gone Air Force. You should have done everything you wanted, and I should have helped you instead of helping Dad stop you. Mackenzie reached out, took his left hand, the one that still worked. I forgive you, but that's not why I'm here. Then why? Because you need to forgive yourself, and you need to figure out what kind of man you're going to be now. The Army's going to discharge you. Your arm might never work right. Your career is over. So what now? Garrett had no answer. I know what I'd do, Mackenzie continued. I'd learn from this. I'd figure out why I believed what I believed. I'd work on becoming someone who doesn't attack people for threatening my worldview. How do I do that? Therapy. Real therapy. Not just VA counseling. Actually working on yourself. She squeezed his hand. Dad's paying for my therapy now. Started 6 months ago. It's helping. Maybe it could help you too. What are you in therapy for? For the anger, for the resentment, for spending 10 years of my life waiting for Dad to give me permission to live. She smiled sadly. Turns out you don't need permission. You just need courage. They sat in silence for a while. Brother and sister, both victims of the same toxic teaching, both trying to find a way forward. Finally, Mackenzie stood. I have to drive back tonight, work tomorrow, but I'll visit again, if you want. I want. Good. She headed for the door, stopped. That woman, Reese Hartford, what she did to your arm? That's not her fault, that's yours. But what she proved? That women can fight, can defend themselves, can earn their place? That's important. Don't spend the rest of your life resenting her for it. She left. Garrett lay in the dark, thinking about everything. About his father's lies. About Mackenzie's stolen dreams. About Reese Hartford's eyes in that moment before he attacked. She'd earned her place. Through training, through combat, through skill and courage, and refusing to back down when men like him tried to intimidate her. And he'd attacked her for it. Shame washed over him. Deep, corrosive shame that the morphine couldn't touch. Somewhere on the base, Reese Hartford was probably dealing with her own aftermath, her own guilt for breaking his arm, even though she'd had no choice. Garrett wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault, that she'd done what she had to do, that he'd deserved it, but he couldn't contact her during the investigation, couldn't make it about him seeking forgiveness when she was the one facing potential court-martial. So he lay there in the dark and made a promise to himself. If he survived this, if he got through the investigation and the discharge and the physical therapy and the rest of his broken life, he would become someone different, someone who didn't attack women for being competent, someone who didn't let toxic masculinity turn into violence, someone his sister could be proud of. It was a small goal, but it was something, and right now something was all he had. The investigation took 4 weeks. 4 weeks of interviews, depositions, video analysis, and endless speculation from everyone who had an opinion about women in combat. The videos went viral within 24 hours. 40 different angles of the same 2.7 seconds. Enhanced, slowed down, analyzed frame by frame. Conservative media ran headlines like, "Female soldier's excessive force ends male colleague's career." Liberal media countered with, "Woman defends herself against military harassment, faces punishment." Military Times tried for balance with, "Fort Bragg incident highlights training protocol gaps." Social media exploded. Twitter hashtags #Justice for Reese and #Justice for Garrett trended simultaneously. Reddit threads went hundreds of comments deep. YouTube analysis videos dissected every second. Everyone had an opinion. Most of them were wrong. Because the videos, for all their clarity, couldn't show what mattered most. Couldn't show Garrett's pattern of harassment, his 3 previous incidents, the complaints that had been dismissed, the women he'd intimidated, the culture that had protected him. Couldn't show Reese's training, the thousands of hours she'd spent learning to defend herself. The night in Afghanistan when those same skills had saved her life. Couldn't show the moment of decision when she'd realized Garrett wasn't demonstrating anymore. He was attacking, really attacking. And she had maybe 2 seconds to respond or take a punch that could kill her. The videos showed the break, the scream, the blood, but they didn't show the why. That's what the investigation was for. Captain Donnelly interviewed all 282 witnesses. Most told the same story. Garrett had been aggressive, inappropriate, had escalated the situation, had attacked first. But 55 soldiers told a different story, said Reese had provoked him, had embarrassed him deliberately, had used excessive force. Private Amber Cross, the woman Garrett had injured in 2017, gave particularly damning testimony. "Corporal Kane has a pattern of aggressive behavior toward female soldiers," she told investigators. "He injured me during combatives training 2 years ago, dislocated my shoulder, called it an accident. My report was dismissed. Today, Specialist Hartford did what I wish I could have done. She stopped him. Her testimony led investigators to dig deeper. They found 23 unreported incidents involving Garrett Kane over 4 years. Harassment, intimidation, accidents during training that only seemed to happen to women. A pattern, a clear, documented pattern. Private Lucas Garrett provided crucial video evidence. He'd started recording when Garrett removed his headgear, captured the verbal threats, the attack, everything. I recorded it because I knew Kane had friends in high places, Lucas told investigators. I wanted to make sure there was evidence if he tried to blame Specialist Hartford. While technically a violation of training ground recording protocols, investigators declined to pursue charges given the evidentiary value and the fact that Lucas had submitted the footage voluntarily to protect a fellow soldier. The video was damning, showed Garrett clearly attacking, showed Reese clearly defending. No ambiguity. Wade Brennan's testimony was perhaps the most important. I was 15 feet away when Corporal Kane threw that punch, he told the review board. I've seen combat in 3 wars. I know the difference between a demonstration strike and a genuine attack. That was a genuine attack. Full power, aimed at Specialist Hartford's face. If it had connected, it would have caused severe injury, possibly fatal. Could Specialist Hartford have used less force? No. The technique she employed, Ude Garami arm lock, is designed to control an opponent through joint manipulation. It's applied until the opponent submits or structural failure occurs. Corporal Kane resisted instead of submitting. The break was a direct result of his resistance, not excessive force from Specialist Hartford. In your professional opinion, did she act appropriately? She acted exactly as she was trained to act when facing a lethal threat. If she'd done anything less, she might be in a hospital bed instead of him, or a morgue. The board was silent. Are you saying Corporal Kane intended to kill her? I'm saying he intended to hurt her badly. Whether that resulted in death or just severe injury wasn't his concern. He'd lost control. He was attacking out of rage and wounded pride. In that moment, he wasn't a soldier conducting a training demonstration. He was a violent man attacking a woman who'd embarrassed him. Brennan's testimony, combined with the videos, the witness statements, and Garrett's history, painted a clear picture. The investigation's final report was 82 pages. The conclusion was unambiguous. Corporal Garrett Kane had violated training protocols, ignored direct orders, and committed assault against a fellow soldier. His injury was a direct result of his own actions and his victim's lawful self-defense. Specialist Reese Hartford had acted appropriately and within her rights. No excessive force, no misconduct, no charges recommended. The report also identified systemic failures, a culture that had protected Garrett despite multiple complaints, training protocols that needed revision, harassment reporting procedures that had failed, 23 recommendations for policy changes, all aimed at preventing another Garrett Kane from terrorizing female soldiers for years before someone finally stopped him. When Captain Donnelly delivered the findings to Reese in his office, she felt something break inside her. Relief, validation, exhaustion. No charges will be filed, he said. You're cleared to return to full duty. And Corporal Kane? Discharge under other than honorable conditions. Assault charges under UCMJ. He'll face a summary court-martial, but given his cooperation and acceptance of responsibility, likely just the discharge and forfeiture of benefits. Reese nodded, felt no satisfaction, just sadness for the waste of it all. What happens now? She asked. Now you get back to being a soldier, and you try to put this behind you. But Reese knew it would never be behind her. The sound would follow her, the sight of Garrett's arm at that impossible angle, the knowledge that she'd broken another human being, even in self-defense, even justified. It would follow her. Thank you, sir. Hartford, for what it's worth, you did nothing wrong. Remember that when the nightmares come. She left his office, walked out into the Fort Bragg afternoon, sunshine and blue sky, and the normal sounds of military life continuing around her. She was cleared, exonerated, free to continue her career. But she didn't feel free. She felt weighted down by everything that had happened, by the scrutiny, the judgment, the knowledge that she'd become a symbol, whether she wanted to be or not. Her phone buzzed. A text from Wade Brennan. Heard the news. Proud of you. Take a few days. Then we get back to work. Still a lot to learn. She smiled, despite everything. Brennan was right. The fight wasn't over. It would never be over. But she'd survived this round. That was something. The announcement came 3 weeks later. Fort Bragg's main parade ground. The same place where everything had happened. But this time, 500 soldiers assembled. Word had spread. Everyone wanted to witness the conclusion. Colonel Ramsey stood at a podium. Reese stood at attention beside him. Wade Brennan on her other side. The October sun was gentler now. November approaching. The heat of that terrible morning replaced by cool autumn air. 4 weeks ago, Ramsey began, his voice carrying across the assembly, an incident occurred on this parade ground that forced us to examine who we are as an army, what we value, how we protect our soldiers, all of our soldiers. 500 faces watched, silent, attentive. The investigation is complete. The findings are clear. Corporal Garrett Kane violated training protocols, ignored direct orders, and committed assault against a fellow soldier. His injury was a direct result of his own actions. Specialist Reese Hartford acted in lawful self-defense, using appropriate force. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Specialist Hartford is cleared of all potential misconduct. She will return to full duty with her record unmarked and with the complete confidence of this command. Applause. Not everyone, but most. The female soldiers especially, loud and sustained. Ramsey held up a hand for silence. Corporal Kane will be discharged from service. The circumstances of his discharge and subsequent legal proceedings are not for public discussion. He paused, looked out at the assembled soldiers. But this incident revealed deeper problems. A culture that protected a known harasser, reporting systems that failed, training protocols that needed revision. Those failures end today. He outlined the changes. Mandatory harassment training, reformed reporting procedures, new safety protocols for combatives demonstrations, zero-tolerance enforcement that would actually be enforced. This army is changing, he continued. Some resist that change. Some cling to old ways, old prejudices, old ideas about who belongs in uniform and who doesn't. But change is not weakness. Change is evolution. And any soldier who cannot evolve has no place in my army. He turned to Reese. Specialist Hartford represents what this army needs to be. Skilled, courageous, professional, willing to defend herself when attacked, willing to stand tall when others try to knock her down. He faced the crowd again. Women have earned their place in combat roles, earned it through blood, sacrifice, and excellence, through soldiers like Specialist Hartford who serve with distinction and defend themselves with skill when forced to. Anyone who has a problem with that needs to examine their own fitness for service. More applause, louder now. Then Wade Brennan stepped forward, unscheduled. Colonel Ramsey looked surprised, but nodded permission. Sir, permission to address the formation? Granted, Master Sergeant. Brennan turned to face 500 soldiers. His voice was rough, emotional in a way soldiers rarely heard from senior NCOs. I'm 58 years old, 37 years of service. Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghan. He looked at Reese. Specialist Hartford is a better hand-to-hand fighter than 90% of the soldiers I've trained in my career. Better than most of the men. Better than I was at her age. And it has nothing to do with her gender. It's skill, dedication, heart, the same qualities that make any soldier excellent. He turned back to the crowd. Some of you watched what happened 4 weeks ago and saw a woman going too far, using excessive force. You're wrong. I was 15 feet away. I saw everything. What I saw was a soldier defending herself against a genuine threat, using exactly the techniques she was trained to use. His voice hardened. And if you have a problem with that, if you think she should have let herself be hurt rather than defend herself, then the problem isn't with women in combat, the problem is with you. 500 soldiers, dead silence. Then applause, starting with the female soldiers, spreading to the male allies. She hadn't prepared a speech, hadn't expected to speak, but 500 soldiers were watching, and she owed them something. I didn't want to break Corporal Kane's arm, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. I wanted to teach, to demonstrate that technique and training matter, that size isn't destiny. She paused, gathered her thoughts. What happened that morning wasn't a victory, it was a necessity. Corporal Kane attacked me with intent to cause serious harm. I responded the only way I could, the way I was trained, the way any of you would respond if someone tried to hurt you. She looked around at the faces. To every female soldier here, you will face doubt. You will face harassment. You will be tested in ways that male soldiers aren't. But you are not alone. You are not less than. And you have every right to defend yourselves, every right to serve, every right to stand tall. Some of the female soldiers were crying to them, and something subtle but important. The conversation had shifted. The culture had cracked. Not broken, not fixed, but cracked, letting light in. Reese walked back to her barracks with Wade Brennan. You did good, he said. I broke a man's arm. You survived. That's what matters. Does it get easier, living with it? Brennan thought about the men he'd killed in combat, the decisions he'd made, the weight he carried. No, but you learn to carry it, and you remember why you did it. To arrange what came next. I am Reese Hartford, she wrote. I am a soldier. I defended myself. I survived, and I will continue to serve with honor. Simple words, but they were hers, and they were true. Outside, Fort Bragg continued its operations. Helicopters flew, soldiers trained. The Army moved forward, and Reese Hartford moved forward with it. 6 months later, April 2020, Fort Benning, Georgia. Reese Hartford stood in formation with 63 other soldiers beginning Ranger School, the most challenging leadership course in the Army. 61 days of hell, mountains, swamps, hunger, sleep deprivation, tests of will and skill and determination. The surgery on her shoulder had been successful, shrapnel removed in December. 3 months of physical therapy, medical clearance in March. The scar was small, but permanent. Another reminder of Afghanistan. Another piece of her story. Only 5 women had ever graduated. Reese intended to be the 6th. The videos from Fort Bragg had followed her. Everyone knew her name, knew her story. Some of the other students looked at her with respect, others with skepticism, a few with hostility. She ignored them all, focused on the mission. The instructors were hard but fair. They pushed everyone to their limits. Gender didn't matter, only performance. Reese excelled in combatives, no surprise there. But she also excelled in navigation, patrolling, leadership. She was small, but she was strong, and she was determined. By the mountain phase, she'd earned respect from most of her fellow students. They'd seen her carry her share, do her part, lead when it was her turn. By the swamp phase, even the skeptics had to admit she belonged. She graduated on June 20th, 2020, 61 days after starting. Thinner, harder, more confident. Her mother came to the ceremony, cried tears of pride and relief. Your father would be so proud, she whispered. Wade Brennan came too, stood at the back, didn't make a fuss, just wanted to see his students succeed. When Reese walked across the stage to receive her Ranger tab, The applause was genuine, not because she was a woman, because she'd earned it. After the ceremony, she found Brennan. "You did it," he said. "We did it. You trained me. I gave you tools. You did the work." They stood together, teacher and student, both knowing this was a milestone, but not an ending. "What's next?" Brennan asked. "Back to Fort Bragg, Combat Instructor School. I want to teach." "Good. We need more instructors like you." "Wade?" "Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For training me when you didn't have to. For believing in me. For standing up for me when it mattered." Brennan felt his throat tighten. This young woman had come so far. From an angry 18-year-old who just lost her father to a Ranger-qualified combat veteran who'd proven herself over and over. "You made it easy to believe in you," he said. "Just keep being who you are. Keep serving with honor, and keep showing everyone that excellence has no gender." "I will." They shook hands. Then, breaking protocol, hugged, just for a moment. Then stepped back into their proper roles. Reese found her mother. They left Fort Benning together, drove back to Maine for a week of leave before Reese returned to duty. On the drive, her mother asked the question she'd been holding for 6 months. "Do you still think about it? About what happened with that soldier?" Reese looked out the window at the Georgia countryside passing by. "Every day." "Does it get easier?" "A little. I'm learning to carry it." "Do you regret it?" "No. He was going to hurt me, maybe kill me. I defended myself. I'll never regret that." Her mother reached over, squeezed her hand. "Good, because I raised a daughter who stands up for herself, who doesn't let anyone hurt her, who survives." Reese squeezed back. They drove north toward home, toward a week of normalcy before Reese returned to Fort Bragg and the next chapter of her career. She didn't know it yet, but she would spend the next 5 years as a senior combat instructor, would train thousands of soldiers, would become one of the most respected teachers in the Army, would eventually be promoted to sergeant, would receive offers to go special forces, would decline them in favor of teaching, because that's where she could make the most difference. Teaching the next generation, making sure they understood that skill mattered more than size, that women belonged, that everyone deserved to defend themselves. The incident at Fort Bragg would follow her, would be mentioned in every profile, every article, every conversation about women in combat, but it wouldn't define her. Not entirely. She was more than one terrible moment, more than one broken arm, more than one viral video. She was a soldier, a teacher, a survivor. She was Reese Hartford, and her story was far from over. 1 year after the incident, October 2020, Garrett Kane, now 26, sat in a community center in Amarillo, Texas, leading a support group for veterans struggling with anger issues. His right arm still didn't work right. He'd regained about 60% function, could use it for basic tasks, but would never pass a military physical again. The discharge had come through. Other than honorable, loss of benefits, a permanent mark on his record. But he was still alive, still had a chance to be better. The therapy had helped. 12 months of intensive counseling, working through the toxic masculinity his father had taught him. The anger, the resentment, the need to dominate to feel valuable. It wasn't easy. Some days he still felt the old rage, saw a competent woman and felt threatened. But he'd learned to recognize those feelings, to question them, to choose different responses. He'd reconciled with Mackenzie. She'd helped him find this job leading the support group, helped him understand that redemption was possible, but not easy. That he'd spend the rest of his life working to be better than he'd been. He'd written a letter to Reese Hartford, never sent it, wrote another one, didn't send that either. Wrote 10 letters, each one trying to express remorse without making it about him seeking forgiveness. Finally, on the first anniversary of the incident, he sent one. It was simple, direct, honest. "Specialist Hartford, I attacked you. What happened to my arm was my fault, not yours. You defended yourself appropriately. I'm sorry for attacking you. I'm sorry for the position I put you in. I'm working to become someone who doesn't attack people for threatening my worldview. I hope your career continues to thrive. You earned your place. I tried to take it from you. That was wrong. I'm sorry. Garrett Kane. He didn't expect a response, didn't deserve one. But 6 months later, he got one. Brief, professional. I forgive you. I hope you've forgiven yourself. Keep working on becoming better. Reese Hartford. Garrett read it in his apartment, read it 10 times, then folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Forgiveness, not absolution, not friendship, just forgiveness. It was more than he deserved, but it was something. He went to his support group meeting, shared his story with 12 other veterans who'd let anger control them, who'd hurt people, who were trying to be better. My name is Garrett Kane, he said. 1 year ago, I attacked a woman soldier because her competence threatened my ego. She broke my arm defending herself. I deserved it. What I'm learning is that strength isn't about dominating others. It's about controlling yourself, about choosing to be better even when it's hard. The group listened, shared their own stories, supported each other. It wasn't much. It wasn't redemption, but it was a start. And for Garrett Kane, a start was all he had. October 2024, Garrett Kane, age 30, sat in a modest office in Amarillo. Physical therapy assistant. He'd spent 4 years learning a new trade, helping others recover from injuries like his own. His right arm still had limited function, 60% mobility. Permanent reminder. But he'd learned to work with it. On the wall, a certificate from the Veterans Crisis Center, volunteer counselor. He talked to young men struggling with toxic masculinity, using his own story as cautionary tale. His phone buzzed. Text from Mackenzie. Proud of you, little brother. Coffee this weekend? He smiled, typed back. Absolutely, my treat. 5 years ago, he'd lost everything. Career, arm, future. But he'd built something new. Not redemption, just forward movement. The letter from Reese Hartford sat in his desk drawer. I forgive you. 3 words that had freed him from the prison of his own guilt. He would never forget what he'd done, never stop working to be better. But for the first time in 5 years, Garrett Kane felt something like peace. Montana, October 2024. Wade Brennan, now 63, stood in a small boxing gym on the outskirts of Billings. Retired 2 years, but retirement didn't mean stopping. Twice a week, he taught self-defense to local teenagers, girls especially, free of charge. Size doesn't matter, he told a class of 15-year-olds. Technique matters. One of the best fighters I ever trained was 5'4", saved lives in Afghanistan, became a ranger, teaches at Fort Benning now. A girl raised her hand. Was that the woman who broke that guy's arm? I saw the video. Brennan smiled. That was her, Specialist, now Sergeant, Hartford. And what she did that day was defend herself. That's what I'm teaching you. Not to hurt people, to protect yourselves. After class, he checked his phone. Text from Reese. Still crushing it out here. Miss our training sessions. Thank you for everything, Wade. He typed back. Proud of you every day. You became everything I knew you could be. Stay strong, Wade. He put the phone away, looked at the young people leaving the gym. Some of them would join the military, some wouldn't. But all of them now knew they could defend themselves. That was legacy enough. He trained thousands of soldiers over 37 years. But Reese Hartford? She was proof that one good teacher and one dedicated student could change the world. Not bad for an old Gulf War sergeant who'd once thought women didn't belong in combat. Change was hard, but necessary, and Wade Brennan had learned to change. Fort Benning Combat Instructor School, October 2024. Sergeant Reese Hartford, now 29 years old, 9 years into her military career, stood in front of a class of 200 new soldiers, mixed gender, all of them nervous, all of them trying to prove themselves. She'd been promoted to sergeant 2 years ago, had turned down opportunities to go special forces, to deploy again, to chase higher rank, because teaching was where she could make the most difference. "My name is Sergeant Hartford," she said to the class. "Over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you how to fight, how to survive, how to defend yourselves and your fellow soldiers." She walked along the front row, making eye contact. "Some of you are bigger than me, stronger than me. That's fine. Size and strength matter in combat, but they're not everything. Technique matters. Speed matters. Decision-making matters." She stopped, turned to face them. "I'm going to tell you something that not many people talk about. 5 years ago, I broke a man's arm, in front of nearly 300 witnesses. It's on video. Some of you have probably seen it." The class shifted uncomfortably. A few nodded. "I broke his arm because he attacked me with intent to cause serious harm. I defended myself using the techniques you're going to learn in this course. The injury wasn't intentional, but it happened, and I have to live with that." She paused. "I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because the techniques we teach are real. They work. Used properly, they can save your life. Used improperly, they can cause serious harm. You need to respect that. Respect your training partners. Follow safety protocols. And understand that the goal isn't to hurt people. The goal is to be so skilled that you can protect yourself and others without excessive force." A hand went up. A young female private, maybe 19. "Sergeant, do you regret what happened?" Reese considered the question, the same question she'd been asked 1,000 times. "I regret that the situation escalated to violence. I regret the injury, but I don't regret defending myself, and I never will." She looked at the young woman. "If someone attacks you with intent to cause serious harm, you defend yourself. Always. Gender doesn't matter. Rank doesn't matter. Your right to protect yourself is absolute. Remember that." The private nodded, eyes shining with something like hope. The class continued. Reese taught them basic techniques, proper form, safety protocols, the same things Wade Brennan had taught her 11 years ago. After class, the young private approached. "Sergeant Hartford?" "Yes, Private." "I just wanted to say thank you for being here, for showing us that women can do this." Reese smiled. "Women have always been able to do this. We just haven't always been allowed to. Make the most of the opportunity." "I will, Sergeant." The private left. Reese gathered her training materials, headed back to her office. On her desk sat a framed photo. Her father in his Marine uniform. Next to it, his dog tags. Next to that, a photo from her Ranger School graduation. And next to that, a small news clipping. The headline, "Fort Bragg adopts Hartford Protocol for Combatives Training." They'd named the new safety protocols after her, after what had happened, making sure it wouldn't happen again. It was a strange kind of legacy, born from violence, from a terrible moment that she'd carry forever. But maybe that was okay. Maybe that terrible moment had led to changes that would protect other soldiers, other women who just wanted to serve, to prove themselves, to defend themselves when necessary. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up, opened her messages. That evening, she called her mother in Portland, weekly ritual for 5 years now. "Hi, Mom." "Reese, how are you, sweetheart?" "Good, tired. Trained 200 new soldiers this week." Her mother laughed. The sound that had once been so rare, broken by grief and fear, was now common, warm. "Your father would be so proud." "I know, I feel him with me every day." "I'm proud too, not just of what you've accomplished, but of who you've become. Strong but compassionate, a warrior who teaches others to survive." "I learned that from you, Mom. You survived losing Dad. You survived me leaving. You survived everything." "We both did." A pause. "Have you thought about coming home for Christmas?" "Already requested leave. I'll be there." "Good. I love you, Reese. Love you too, Mom. She hung up. Two survivors, mother and daughter, both carrying loss, both moving forward. Reese Hartford had come a long way from that parking garage in Portland, from that frightened 17-year-old who couldn't defend herself. She'd become a warrior, a teacher, a survivor. She'd broken a man's arm and learned to live with it. She'd faced scrutiny and judgment and hate and came through it stronger. She'd proven over and over that excellence had no gender, that skill and courage and determination mattered more than size. And every day she woke up and put on the uniform and served with honor. Because that's what soldiers did. That's what Reese Hartford did. And she would keep doing it for as long as the Army would have her. The sound still echoed sometimes, in quiet moments, in nightmares. That terrible crack snap that had changed everything. But she'd learned to carry it, to accept it, to understand that it was the price of survival. And survival in the end was worth any price. Outside her office, Fort Benning continued its mission, training the next generation of soldiers, making them ready for whatever came next. And Reese Hartford was part of that mission, would be for years to come, teaching, training, showing them that excellence transcended everything else, that skill could overcome size, that courage could overcome fear, that one terrible moment didn't define a life. It was a lesson she'd learned the hard way. In front of 282 witnesses, with a sound that would echo forever. But she'd learned it, and now she would teach it. One soldier at a time, one technique at a time, one life saved at a time. It was enough. It had to be enough. And for Reese Hartford, it was.